Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us on this Saturday morning. I'm calling in from Providence. We're going to present APT, which is our project based on accessible pregnancy tests for people with vision impairments. We're excited to share our journey and how we went about the whole process, and also share like our learnings, and if anyone would be working on similar projects for accessibility and universal design, some things to look out for, and what our methodologies were. We have the team here. Wait, I'm not. Katie, I think you'll have to go next. Yeah, so we can just like get started with intros. Katie, do you want to go first?
Hi everyone, I'm Katie. I'm currently a dual master student at MIT working on accessibility actually, accessible data visualizations. I'm from the program called Integrated Design Management, so are all of the other team members on this team. I'm also double majoring in electrical engineering and computer science. Really excited to be here.
Cool. Hey everyone, I'm Leandra. I am also IDM and computer science at MIT. Before this, I was in education. And yeah, I've also weirdly continued to work on accessibility products with Katie. And so it's been, and I think a lot of it was inspired by the work here today. I think that really shaped the way that I think about accessibility and designing for it. So really excited to share that with all of you.
Hello, my name is Yuna. I'm from IDM at MIT, and I used to be an industrial designer at Samsung, but now I'm working as an innovation designer at ByteDance at TikTok. So I would happy to share our journey for this app project. So yeah, thank you for having me here.
Awesome. And I'm Saloni. I'm an industrial designer as well. Currently, I'm working at Loft Design, which is a design studio in Providence and Boston. And I'm also involved with the work at IDSA Boston. And we're really thankful to the Women in Design NYC community for helping us share our project and showcasing what our journey was. Yeah, so we just want to like start off with like just sharing what the framework around this project was. This was done during one of our semesters at IDM, and IDM is essentially a design, engineering, and business program where we use human-centered design to solve different problems or work on projects where we can approach the problem statement from this perspective and looking at like the project holistically and not like in a side of either design, business, or engineering. This project essentially was from the lens of like if you had to build a product and like bring it to market, how can you go about it? This was like a loose structure for us as to like how we should make like all the presentations, but also like do our work. So since this was like a semester project, we started with like opportunity findings where we try to figure out like what we want to work on. Instead of like starting with the problem, we went like hunting for like what exactly do we want to work for. We had like a bunch of like research reviews where we did like both primary and secondary research. We are going to share that like in detail today as well as to like what methodologies we had used. And the design and business aspects were quite important for us because we were solving for a problem, but also we had to look at like if we had to bring this to market, like what were some of the things that we had to keep in mind. And then feasibility was a big thing. So that's where like engineering was important as well. And then we had like a bunch of like design reviews, both with like the professors, but like outside of like the IDM program, there were like people who used to come in and give us feedback, which was really helpful to get like stakeholder perspective. Yeah, so it was like a 12-week long program, like a semester and like project. So all of it was just like packed into this. I'm gonna hand it off to Katie now for the research part.
Nice. Sorry, I am going to start off with a little teaser video for you all. Hopefully audio is coming through, but if not, let me know.
Everyone should have the right to privacy, but blind and partially sighted people are denied this right due to inaccessible design and information, even when doing something as personal as taking a pregnancy test.
Effectively, once you bring in a color identifier or an OCR or a phone, like the only things invited to that party are your two eyes and the test strip. So access to me has always been creating an equal experience and making it, you know, not have to be reliant on technology that folks might not have. Plan A for most people in my life is they go to the dollar store and get a test and come back.
Right.
Like, that is their plan A. And equal access to me means that I should also have that plan A.
If I get good instructions for the pregnancy test, I could do it, but then I still would have to have sighted assistants to read it, which, you know, nobody wants that.
It's impersonal to have to rely on somebody else to read my pregnancy results. And it makes you feel like you're dependent on other people to do things that you know you're fully capable of doing, but it's just not accessible.
All of the audios that you just heard are from our user interviews by speaking with different people. And as you can probably hear, we'll dive into kind of our research process in a bit, but this hopefully provides a good overview of some of the experiences and motivations behind this project. We wanted to put up this quote here from someone who reached out to us after hearing about the project, not as a testimony of saying, you know, look at our project, how great it is, but more so to say, you know, the real impact is for when this product goes to market, is for when these accessible projects or prototypes actually make it into the real life of the user. And we were very motivated by by users like this to try and take this product to market, and more on that later. So we want to start by talking about our research experience or process. There are 4 primary parts in this research process: primary research, secondary research, empathy research, and data analysis. So the first thing we want to talk about is our user interviews, which was really, really insightful for us. How it started. This is a list of things that we thought that we were going to work on at the beginning of this project. And as you can see, even though some of them are focused on accessibility, they might not necessarily be what we ended up working on. And the reason for that is to show the trajectory at which the project has changed and evolved. So we thought about, you know, Instructable for things that people can just 3D print and use. We thought about immersive theater experiences without sight being necessary. You know, escape room that doesn't really require you to be able to see things. So you kind of see the theme, but none of those are exactly what we ended up working on. So how it was going was we then decided to speak to accessibility experts. These are people who work in this space, have developed products. We've talked to accessibility advocates who have a lot of experience in advocating for the needs for people who have disabilities. And we also talked to a lot of people who, you know, embrace and live this disability as part of their life experiences. And interestingly, when we asked them about sort of what frustrates them, what are some of the pain points, what they wish they could have if they had a magic wand. And many times the topic of pregnancy tests come up. These are some of the quotes that we collected from our user interviews. And time and again, people mention that pregnancy test has been ignored forever. Pregnancy test is something that is very private, that represents autonomy, that has so much emotional aspect to it, but hasn't really been looked at in a very long time. And so 12 user interviews later, this is the research question we formulated, which is how might we create a pregnancy test for people with visual impairment to use at home without requiring sighted assistance? And the reason that these clauses are in there, for example, without requiring sighted assistance, largely goes back to some of the quotes that you heard at the beginning of the video, which highlights the importance for autonomy, equality. This is in a social space and a social experience that someone else has access to, and therefore the blind and low vision community also feels like they have the right to have that same experience. So the second part of research is secondary. Obviously, we're very familiar with kind of the literature research or market research. We also searched for similar products. We found some similar products that are out there, so that served as a great reference point for us. But what we wanted to talk about today is some of the less conventional, more out of the box secondary research methods. So because having access to people in the community to get their voice isn't as easy as we thought it was going to be, we turned into TikTok, YouTube, blogs, a lot of like online social spaces to hear where people share about these experiences, to kind of get a sense of what the community wants, what are people currently experiencing, what are people's current workaround to this problem. So some of the people that we found, Molly Burke was fantastic. She does a lot of sharing of her daily life as a blind individual. And TikTok turns out to be a really great resource for getting a sense of some of the pain points and complaints and these little hacks that blind and low vision people have, which I thought was very fascinating. And there was in particular one TikTok video that Leah found, which is just the OCR, which is a recognition software, someone using that to read a pregnancy test. And instead of saying no, and you just keep hearing on, and you're like, okay, why is that? And the reason for this is because with a pregnancy test is a digital reading result, which says no, but because you might not necessarily have a frame of reference in terms of how to orient it, your OCR is seeing on. And so all you're hearing is, okay, my pregnancy test is on, then what? So that goes to show, that's like a sliver of experience, but it goes to show all of the problems that surround making a pregnancy test accessible and kind of the need for this to exist. Another part, or another thing that we did that we think is very helpful is to do a product teardown. So we went when we bought almost all of the pregnancy tests that are available on the internet. Well, not on the internet, but like in an offline CVS store. And we broke down the product just to see how they work, you know, get a sense of like, what are the different components that goes into it. So this is an image. This is not from our product teardown per se, but this was one of the products that we looked at, which is Clear Blue, which is one of the very few digital like pregnancy tests that gives you like a readout results rather than showing a very faint or may not exist line. So empathy research was another thing that we felt very strongly about that was very helpful in our journey. For example, we all took a pregnancy test, and this is mostly to help us understand the different steps that someone goes through when taking a pregnancy test. And we did so by simulating the experience of someone who is blind and low vision. But the most important point I want to make here is that we need to remember that these simulations isn't exactly the same as someone's real life experience, nor does they accurately represent the problems that people face all the time. So there's only so much simulations can do. They can be helpful in a specific context in a sense that obviously it helps us kind of try to walk in someone else's shoes a little bit, but we just wanted to caution everyone and also say this as a disclaimer that we don't claim to have fully experienced someone else's daily life. But these are some of the glasses that we made to help with that simulation experience. And so based on different types of blindness and low vision, we made these glasses and we put them on, and then we try to take a pregnancy test. And so a lot of the issues sort of emerged as we were doing this exercise. Obviously, we're still bringing our own bias, because our problem for a day or even for like 15 minutes might be someone's problem for life, or something that we consider might be a challenge isn't really for someone who's lived that experience for so many times that they've developed a hack or they're naturally better at orienting themselves. These are some images of some of the team members doing the test. And as you can see, this particular instructions took quite a while, even just for us to read and process and remember. So there were multiple pain points that we sort of discussed and realized as we were doing the simulation test. For our data analysis part, two things that were really helpful. One was affinity mapping, which is an open coding process that we did for all of our user interviews. And then the other one is like competitive analysis. So we broke down the process of taking a test into 4 parts: the reading of the instruction, actually conducting the test, reading the results, and disposing the test. And for each of these steps, we looked at what are the existing practices, what does one have to do with the products that's already out in the world, and identified pain points in these areas. So I'm in the photo, I'm holding up this like very long sheet of instructions. It's very long and tedious, like regardless of whether someone can read this or not, it's just very long. And you could argue that, is there a better way to present this information that is less information intensive or cognitively demanding? It's also not available in audio. So we tried a lot of the other apps, even some of the apps that says that they have audible instructions. We would try to go to their websites, or we try to call in some of these customer supports. None of those worked. Bad color contrast, it's not standardized. These fonts kind of are just all over the place, may not be the best for someone who's low vision to try and read it. For the second part of actually conducting the test, there is a lot of very detailed or precise language. You have to put this in your urine stream for exactly 5 seconds. And then the next part comes with waiting. So you're keeping track of time for different parts of the pregnancy test. And then for the wait time, you also kind of have to leave the test somewhere, set a timer. So it's a lot of moving pieces. And for someone who is blind and low vision, there's additional cognitive load of like remembering where my test is, setting a timer, going back to it. This just goes to show kind of the process of taking the test and the kind of challenges that there might be. And then with reading the results, some of these are images we found online, but as you can see, the results are displayed very inconsistently, right? Sometimes it's say, oh, it's 1 line or 2 line, it's a plus, it's a minus. Sometimes it'll have a yes with a plus and a clock. So you're like, what does the clock do? What does that mean? Also, for a lot of these OCR devices that we try to use and try to get them to read the results for us, the result read by these OCR softwares is also very inconsistent. And then lastly, for disposing the test, this is an image of packaging that we saw, and it's kind of bulky, even though there might just be 1 or 2 tests in it. And obviously with a very iconic Friends scene comes with the privacy of the result. How do you protect that after disposal? So these are some of the things that we're thinking about as we were looking at products that already exist in the market. Affinity mapping. So this is our Miro board. We're very strong advocates of Miro. It helps with our process a lot. This is all of our users that we've talked to, and the sticky notes are kind of color coded. We first just went in and all 4 of us listened to the transcript or read the transcript and then typed in our notes, things that we thought was interesting. This process is completely organic. There is no, there's no requirements of what should go in and what should not. We just sort of put everything in. And then the second part is grouping. So we color coded them and then we put them into like 12 different groups of insight. So some of them might be, pain points. Some of them might be possible solutions that they have heard about, or like, things that we really want, or things that they think other products do really well that they would love to see applied to a pregnancy test. So we color coded them, put them into groups, and then we sort of like sorted them a little better. And then we identified the needs and the pain points, which is the most important thing that drives all of our design, prototype, as well as actually making the product. And then the last thing is, by looking at these main pain points as well as our sorted categories, what are some of the metrics that or kind of design principles that we came up with that we want to stay true to, that we want to use to help us evaluate different prototypes. This is our user journey. This is Leah and I. This is a team effort. Again, we kind of mapped all of the pain points and needs across different stages of the user journey. So similar to, reading instructions, testing, reading results, and disposal. Having done that, this is the journey of a self-test process that we came up with. So these are the main steps to testing. And then at each different stage, we kind of pulled out quotes from our user interview to really drive home the point of what is difficult about it. And then at the top, we kind of outlined the emotional stages, or kind of the main emotions that people experience as they're going through this. This is our design principle. We have 5 of them, which might seem like a lot. The first most important thing is accessibility and autonomy. So designing the test in a way that user can conduct the test independently. Privacy, focusing on different touch points throughout the user journey to maintain privacy. And then affordability. So I think this is something that's really important to think about, is that accessibility also implies affordability. If our product is going to cost like $100, that's not as accessible as a $10 pregnancy test, right? So how do we design products so that it's accessible in a financial sense as well? Effective design, this was something that we were very passionate about, that we would love for it to happen. It's just to design this whole experience so that it takes into consideration the sensitive situations that the user might be in and kind of account for the emotions that might arise in these situations. And the last one is sustainability. As you can see, packaging is kind of a big issue. There's a lot of packaging, and then also with some of the digital pregnancy tests, you can't really recycle them. So ideally, we would love for our products to be sustainable as well. These are the 5 things that we try to keep in mind as we were designing this. And so that wraps up the research section of our project. So the takeaway with regard to research, at least for us, was that research comes in all shapes and sizes. So feel free to be creative. Like, research can mean a lot of things. It means going out into the wild, doing ethnography. It means going on TikTok or finding users on Reddit to talk to them. The second thing is to keep an open mind. Research might take you to places that you have not previously thought about. In this case, it took us to places that we didn't think that we would work on. The third thing is empathy building is important, but also use with caution, and don't trust your empathy building exercise that much. At least like empathy exercises shouldn't replace talking to real users. The fourth one is look at what's out there and see what you can learn from them. Talk to users, real users, as much as possible and as often as possible. That was one of the things that really helped us. And Saloni, will talk about how that was helpful for our user testing and iterative prototyping. Finding users might take a lot longer, and it might be a lot harder than you think, especially finding your target user. So plan for it early and think about kind of unconventional pathways. We tried Craigslist and Facebook groups and Reddit threads. The last thing is to say, trust the research process. We trusted our process, and it did lead us to a real and very worth solving problem. All right, with that, I will turn over to Saloni.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, in this section, we just want to go over like what our design process and like the development process and the user testing process was. This is sort of like a timeline that we put together just to show like how iterative the whole thing was. We started with like brainstorm sketches and like what you do in the early stage of like figuring out what you want to make. But we tried to like do user testing and like co-design sessions after each session of like either prototyping or like building concepts, so that like we were not in like just developing in a silo and like going to the users at the end point and they telling us that, oh yeah, maybe this feels right, but then we tried to do it like as early as possible so we could like understand their perspective, and the co-design session helped us a lot. And like throughout the brainstorming, since we are like a multidisciplinary team, we tried to like brainstorm in different ways, just like writing things down, sketching, but like getting like really wild with like our concepts. As Katie had mentioned about like the different stages, like we broke down the whole process of taking a pregnancy test, and we tried to like break down our brainstorming process as well, so that we were like not overwhelmed by what all we had to do, but like sort of like putting a structure around it. But yeah, so here we had like reading the test, so like reading the instruction, conducting the test. We tried to see like what kind of form factors could exist for like the product. So like here also we tried to like explore as much as possible, going away from the existing form factors, so that we can understand like what else can be done. We try to see like we try to like simulate like the user's actions and trying to see like how can we make like the testing part easier. Later on, we realized that the testing part wasn't like something that they were struggling with, so that came in with like the user test. But like initially, we were just like exploring as much as we could. Reading the test, as you know, that was the most important part, because that was like the main pain point which existed. So here we try to not stick to like just tactile, because the tactile mechanisms would be like the most obvious ones, but we try to like see like what all could be done. We had like very crazy ideas as well, talking about like a chemical texture change for the strip itself versus like magnetic, button, heat. And then we try to also like explore like how you could dispose the product off. Like could you like replace the test strip? Could you like reuse the product, like some part of the product, to also think about sustainability? But we realized here like early on that we wanted to solve first for accessibility and then maybe go into sustainability next. But also like figuring out like the privacy part was important for us. This is just like a snapshot of like 4 different areas that we were looking at. So this was like the tactile part of like what if like the strip inside could like change, so that like texture can be different for like positive versus negative. So then it's more tactile versus like what if audio was there, like just telling you about like what the result was, versus like if there were like buttons as to coming up for like the results. And then the 4th was like haptic, but we also had like various ideas of like what if like a plant could grow if it's like a positive test. So like we just try to like have fun with it like in this part, so that it was like we were just like breaking boundaries in our head itself to think outside the box essentially. This was just, yeah, we try to like sort all our concepts based on like the reliability and the cost, because that both of them were like very important. So we like diverged during the brainstorming process, but tried to converge during this process where we could figure out like what could actually work. And then we really wanted to just like user test as soon as possible. So we made like very quick prototypes to see like what would like the users' reactions or like even thoughts were. So yeah, these were just like different concepts like pop-up buttons versus textured feedback. What if like something could move inside, like a magnetic mechanism kind of where like the end position of this pin could be different versus like haptic feedback. As you can see, we didn't have like a mechanism here. It was just like we were like simulating the haptic part. So we tried to like really go rapid with it. And this was like the same thing, just like having different end results, so like texture essentially. And yeah, we just went to the users. We had like a whole session where we were trying to figure out like what the mechanism could be. So we had like multiple sections inside this. So like what could the mechanism could be? What could like if it's tactile, like what would that look like? And like the form factor. So we broke down the product into its stages, and this was like the packaging, like for packaging, like what is like an accessible packaging for them, or like what could it look like. So we had like a QR code that we just wanted to test, and then like for instructions as well, like a accessible website where like it basically narrates what the whole process looks like. Yeah, so these were like 4 mechanisms that we went in with them to test. And essentially it was like this was like a first like in-person like bigger user testing. So we tried to create like as much structure as we could. So like for like each mechanism, we tried to see like how would people rank. So it was like very interesting because here like the tactile part was like the most ranked because of I think like what like we had like a lot of like explorations around tactile versus like the by audio. They were just like that is not private for sure, because like we don't want like someone to be like the product to be like narrating what the result was. The temperature part was too subjective, like it can be like too hot for someone versus like not too hot for someone. And I think the vibration one was also like interesting. Like at that time we didn't really get like a lot of like good feedback for that, but that could also have been because of like the how rapid like the prototypes were and how rough the prototypes were. um yeah, and then for the texture part we tried to see like what could like the tactile part look like for like negative versus positive tests. And then it was like we were a little surprised that like everyone was going towards like just 1 line and 2 line, but then we realized that it's like an existing mental model. No one wants to like really change it, and it just like comes in intuitively that 1 line negative, 2 line positive. So and then in the co-design session as well, we were trying to see like what would they think, like what do they think that like the like negative versus positive test could look like. And here as well they were like leaning more towards like 1 line, 2 line, but they were also like going in with like maybe like a contour or like just more, yeah, like more tactile feedback essentially. So we just did like this like an hour long session, I think it was with clay. So it's like very interesting because even though like this seems like very rough, but like this led to like a lot of like good conversations for us to understand like what they were thinking about, and what like was going on like for them to like realize that maybe this is like a good solution. But like having like a good conversation was really helpful. Yeah, and for like form factors, we just wanted to see like what kind of since like in one step of the process you have to lay the product flat on a surface for it to like go through figuring out like what the result is like. So we tried to see like what could be an intuitive um product for one is like the testing part, but also like in that process of like laying it flat. So bottom flat and like the top could be roundish, and then like a narrow top so that like it's easy to know where like the cap could be like removed from. So that was interesting, just like going in with these to see like what people were thinking about. And then we went into like more refinement stages just to like do the next part of the product development. We sort of like zoomed into like more of the tactile parts. and figuring out like what really did we want to do, like what could one, the form, but also like the mechanism could look like. So that was like going hand in hand. These were just like some, like from the initial prototypes, like we tried to like 3D print some things of like yeah, like different form factors, but also like if there are like 3 lines, because we realized there were like 3 modes. One was like negative, positive, but what if like a test is invalid? So that is sometimes like overlooked, but like more often than we would have realized, like a test could be invalid if you've taken the test in the wrong way. So we really wanted to like bring that in as well. And we tried to like quickly also see like what would the color material finish could be like. So this is like the early stages of our sort of like concept refinement, and this is like really early in where we like stuck to like, oh, the product should be tactile, but I think we were struggling with like yeah, so this was like one of the user test sessions. So we, at this point, we didn't really have access to like our target users, but we really wanted to test and see like what people were thinking. So we were like, okay, maybe this section could be like simulating sighted users. We know there was like a caveat of like their experience would be different from the target users, but we really wanted to just like test some things first, and then this like helped us like understand like if they could understand like where the gap was. So like things which were like, if you're not looking at them, like can you like intuitively figure out like what's going on in the product. So this was for sure helpful for that. But yeah, like I think one of the biggest problems in this concept was like how big the product would be. So this was like one of our working prototypes, which is like huge. But yeah, like since it was mechanical, there would be like a lot of like, whenever they're like moving parts, like it becomes bigger, which means it's also like it won't be this big. It was like a prototype, but still like it would be like costlier because there are more moving parts and like more chances of like something's failing if something gets stuck. So that was like, we realized that was a problem. And then, yeah, we were also testing like the packaging. A lot of the users had already told us that QR codes were like they have been using QR codes. So like a lot of them used Apple, like iPhones or like smartphones. So like QR codes like are helpful for them to like just go to like a web page, and then we tried to see like if they could like call a number and like they could be told like what the whole process of taking the test was versus like text instructions on the website. We also thought we could have like just like user manuals inside with Braille. So that was another part. And I'll turn it off to you now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Give me a second. I'm just gonna give you control, and you should be good to go.
Can you go to the previous page? Oh, I cannot.
You have control.
Oh. Oh, it's I cannot control. Oh, sorry. Can you take it over? Like I cannot control. I don't know why.
I'll
and I'm really
give me a second.
that you guys gave me this chance to.
Oh, the previous page. Okay, thank you. Okay, so sorry, like I don't know, like it's the controlling things is not working, but okay, so our team was so focused on like a tactile mechanism, but one day during our session we had a kind of pivotal moment. The one of our users actually show her like power bank she uses every day, and then it was using the vibration to indicate the power level. So we kind of have a lightning moment that we realize that, oh, this is also could be the existing mental model that blind people are using every day. So we can actually leverage this mental model too. That's why, and then can you turn the page next? Oh, okay, thank you. And then so based on, so we go through all the chemical solution and mechanical solution, but based on the feasibility consideration, we noticed that the mechanical solution is generally fall into low cost and also but high reliability group. So we try to focus on mechanical solution, but in deciding what kind of mechanism we want to choose, what we want to decide is we kind of go back to our design philosophy. So we wanted to, we want this product to be affordable. So that means it has to be small size and also low cost and also fewer moving parts. So that's why this is the biggest moment that we decide to go on a vibration. And the second one was a development timeline. So we don't want this product to be like takes forever to launch the product in the market. So that's why we wanted to make it short, make it really short on development time. And the third one is reliability. So if we are gonna come up with like, you know, whole new testing mechanism, then what if it's broken down? Then who's gonna repair it? So those things are the category that that lead us to deciding on a vibration mechanism.
Try and click again. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So this is our final product. So from here, from here, this is the package and product. So from here, so user can either scan a QR code, which pulls up a fully accessible web page, or they can call a number and get a recorded audio instruction. And also, so package has a accessible instruction in a form of braille on the top of the package. So they can kind of read the instruction, read how to get access to the instruction. So inside of the box, there are also paper instructions. This is the paper instruction is also font and text size. We tested out, so it's readable for people with a low vision. And also the reason why we provide like different ways to accessing instruction is like each of these features comes actually from our user test, because each people interacts with the technology in a really unique way. So we want to create all the option possibles for every person. So the body, the shape also already Saloni mentions like this is body shape also from the user testing. So body designed to have a flat base and also roundish top. So roundish top, so that people can easily differentiate where the top part and bottom part, and also where is the testing strip, which is kind of have a tapered shape on the edge, and also where they can find the button is in the middle, so they can easily figure out where the button is. So with all this insight and research, we built a final working prototype. So how does it work? So once test has been taken, the test is placed. Test has to be placed on the flat surface, and the user waits for like 3 minutes to access the test. And when tester press the button, the motor inside the device vibrate to indicate the navigate. If it's navigate, it's a 1 vibration, and if it's positive, it's a 2 vibration. So because this reading is going to store digitally, so the tester can press the button again and again if they want to fill the test again. I'm so sorry. This is really not working. The turning to the next page. Okay, cool. So this is my final page. So using this variation, we can save a lot of cost. So we kind of aim to be this app test to be aimed to be like affordable by being like offered like $11, $11.99, which is around the Perry products price point. So we kind of like breaking down all the cost on each components, and we kind of make it make the product is more affordable for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm really appreciative that you guys gave me this chance to speak and tell my story. It means a lot that people like you are actively working to make sure that we are not left behind. And I really do appreciate that.
It's just marvelous that we're at a point in time where people are thinking about making something like a pregnancy test accessible. This is like a game changer, because it really is saying like, hey, we're here, we're normal people, we families, and then also just the fact that it's giving us the privacy. Thank you. It's a great idea.
So main takeaway from the user testing and also brainstorming and developing the product. So first one is like a rough prototypes are good. So even though it's a low fidelity like that we made like quickly to validate our idea, is perfect, it's okay. So, and the second one is break down your prototypes to test different aspects. So it doesn't have to be like full functioning prototype. We kind of break down to 4 different sections, which is like a mechanism, tactile, and the packaging. So that would be that's really good to do user tests really quickly. So we recommend that. And also third one, user testing can be with the product process breakdown. Oh, that's what I explained it. And then also any sort of testing is important than no testing. We really realized we had a lot of ideas from user testing. So if you have access to users, then meet users as much as possible. And co-design is really important. So we design with the people who has a vision impairments. So we try to put in our shoes into them, but like we really don't know how they feel. So designing with them is really important. So if you can have access to user, we highly recommended design with them. And also have fun with the process and immerse yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic. Leah, I'm going to give you control, okay?
So as we went through the process, we learned more and more that, like, and this is part of the reason why Katie and Una kept saying like not to trust the simulations, because as we kept doing user tests, we saw how many tools that we would never expect that this population uses, what kind of accessibility tools already exist, and that everyone we worked with was like just very, very competent. I don't know, like it feels like when people work on research, a lot of people will try and make a use case for accessibility. They'll like come up with some product, like some coding product, whatever, and be like, what if we use it for people with low vision? And it's often just ridiculous. Like often it's a solved problem. And it's just like something people, I don't know, like miss because they're not working with people with low vision directly. And so that was why these tests were important, because it wasn't that people couldn't do it. It was that there was this gap in that the tool was designed without considering this population. We did a little bit of business research as part of this. We had to for the class, but we also wanted to really bring this to market. We were very serious about that. So we scoped out the competition. We wanted to keep the affordability reasonable. We believe that for accessibility, that the test had to be the same price or almost the same price as a like standard digital pregnancy test. There were things as crazy as blood tests. There were people trying to build apps that were terrible. But we were trying to like keep privacy high and affordability high, as well as actually able to make it. And we did some like total addressable market stuff. We saw that at-home tests were growing. And did some projections as well. Tried to figure out if we were able to start making this, how much would it cost? What were the different pieces? How much would it cost to actually get things made? And where would that money come from? Like what kind of grants were available? That kind of thing. There are actually a lot of grants around this time. This was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And there were a lot of grants for COVID around this time for this exact problem. So all right, we wrapped up the project. Class was over. What did we do next? So the first thing that we did, Katie did some really good outreach, and we had a conversation with a brand director at Clearblue, just like connected over LinkedIn. And she really liked the project. She had good things to say, but we weren't able to turn it into a partnership. Like nothing else happened. And that was actually very similar to my experience in education before, where people would get really enthusiastic about products, like especially like quote unquote feel good products, but it was really, really hard to connect that to things like funding or things like action or things like actually rolling things out. Like people get super, super excited, but it often doesn't connect back to action. We also filed the provisional patent. So we used school resources to do this. It was a really interesting experience. We worked with the tech law clinic at BU, and the whole process was pretty quick. We just had to write up a description of the project, and then the whole thing was a $500 lawyer fee, which I think seems standard. We looked at a bunch of different lawyers they could have connected us with, and they were all around that price, as well as the filing fee, which was $150. And here's what that looked like. It was an interesting process. We also, okay, so all right, we're ready to move forward with this. What do we do next? We realized that something that we didn't consider back here was that we were going to need FDA approval to move this forward. And that's not accounted for in this profit and loss statement. So we're like, all right, we didn't think about FDA approval. What is this going to look like? So we talked to some experts. There's like a lot of people who this is all they do. If you work in medical devices, you know that this is a little bit daunting when you're first getting into it. But here's what we learned. And for anyone thinking about designing medical devices, like my advice would be talk to someone who has gone through this process as soon as possible. Because I think we would have made like some of what we were thinking about as far as how to design the test. We were thinking about like a new kind of chemical test. And if we had known what we did about FDA approval, then we never would have even considered it. Like we keep it as standard as possible. And I think we might have made different decisions if we had known about this process beforehand. So there's 3 different types of classes for FDA approval. There's most devices, class 1, things like, yeah, wheelchairs, Band-Aids, like stuff that's easy. We fell into class 2, which is things like tests, anything that is claiming to like give you medical knowledge back. So like if you're pregnant or not, if you have COVID or not, it all falls under class 2. And then class 3 is like something you would use in surgery. It's really, really hard to get a class 3 device approved. I don't know. I wouldn't go down that road unless I was with a really big company with expertise in that. For class 2, you can get something called 510K approval. And this essentially means that something is similar enough to your product that's been approved before. And there's this link here. So if anyone is planning to do stuff with FDA, like take a screenshot of this. It's super, super helpful. You can go to this database and look up every single product that's ever gotten FDA approval. You can read like about their approval process. You can read all the forms they submitted. It's really, really interesting what's public about all these products. So if you do have a product that has previously been approved, has gotten this, and then you are able to get this 510K approval for a class 2 device, let me know if this is all clear. Then the process takes about half a year and can cost $20,000 to $30,000 plus anything that we would have had to pay upfront for the tests. So a little bit more. We were probably looking at $50,000 to $100,000 for this process. But with a little bit more research, we sort of started to get feedback that there wasn't anything with substantial equivalence, that we were kind of gambling whether or not the vibration mechanism was too different than what was there. And so then that bumped us up to a class 2 approval without 510K. And then that is, we're looking at like a 1 to 2 year timeline. And suddenly our price is closer to $500,000 plus to run these tests. So that was our biggest barrier to moving forward. We would have needed like 5x plus the initial like upfront FDA funding that we thought we were. And this was never going to be a startup. This was never going to be something that we were going to make a lot of money on. We were just planning to release this at cost. But this like lack of substantial equivalence for a device was a real barrier for us. So if we had to do this differently, I would be in this database in like as soon as we were choosing what kind of test to build to make sure that there was something that we could point to, because otherwise it's just a wall. Yeah, and I think this talks to like thinking about the stakeholder map holistically. So we talked to a lot of users, we talked to a lot of accessibility experts. We didn't talk to anyone in healthcare. We didn't talk to anyone in testing. And I think that was a big mistake. Like we should have talked to people who had manufactured medical devices before, right? And like pregnancy tests, like there's a lot of information out there about like that particular chemical test. It's literally used in schools because it's so standard. So there were a lot of people we could have talked to about this, but it was just, we just didn't do it. We were just more focused on the user side. And yeah, we would have, this was from Katie. We would have looked at Braille and tested Braille more often. That for anyone designing for the low vision community, Braille is complicated. And I don't think we knew that up front. We were just printing it like without really questioning it, like Google Translate style, and that is not something that you can do. And then knowing what we know now about that, like upfront, like $200,000 to $500,000 cost to get this like even started, we would have maybe focused on how could we make this a bigger market? How could it be beyond just low vision people? Well, and then we also had personal takeaways. This is the last slide before we take questions, but we just wanted to kind of just recap from each of us the personal takeaways from this project. I think my biggest one was, yeah, trust the process. I think this was maybe like the first time I had gone through the design process, like separated from like a company goal or a business goal up front. And it was really interesting to kind of go through it. It was a little bit scary to go through it, where we were literally just starting by talking to people. We didn't have any real ideas of what we were going to do. But now in hindsight, that was totally the way to do it. To go in like without, like, I think that's where a lot of accessibility projects fail, is when people go in with pre-existing ideas. It's a huge mistake. Just like go in without, like, blank slate, listen to the users, and try and like really like learn about their experiences, and like trust people when they tell you like what they have trouble with and what they don't, and like what kind of products they want. And yeah.
I'll go. I think my biggest one is don't be afraid to pivot. As you heard from Yuna, we pivoted pretty drastically towards in the later stage of the like design prototyping iteration process, but that was a really good pivot for us. And it was a right decision for us to pivot, but it was very late. So don't be afraid to pivot. If your users are telling you one thing, then even if it's late in the stage, you should consider pivoting.
I will go for next. Okay, so my personal takeaway from this the whole process. So as an industry designer, I work in a lot of like tech devices and product in the market, but I never met a single users during the process, during whole my career. But this process was really valuable for me because we consistently meet our users in every process and every step. So we learn from them, we design with them, but that is really helpful. And that was like for me, a lot of like learning comes from them. So like I mean, like connect with as many users as possible as an industry designer to learn what like to get a feedback what you're working on. Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, and I think for me it was mostly about like having decision metrics for like different types of decisions we had to make throughout the process of this project. That was like really helpful for me, just to have like a structure and not just like sometimes that, oh, your gut tells you this, but then there's always like a reason behind why. So like having that like written down, and then having just like numerical data or like some data to like prove that like, oh, this is like the right decision. Like this is like sometimes like the users give you like a lot of like data around that. So that was super helpful throughout the project at different stages to make decisions and not not just like get confused about what should be done. So that I think was super helpful to like do, and then just like experience like how that can like actually help you throughout the process. Yeah. We have, I think, one more slide after this. So yeah, we just wanted to also say that we are not like experts in this area. We had done this project and we have learned so much around the product. And then we just wanted to highlight this like one slide about like the difference between accessible design, inclusive design, and universal design. We were working in mostly like the accessible design area, where we were trying to create like a product which was like meeting someone like one user group's needs. That's why like our market size was so small. But versus if we would have made it inclusive, which I think like we had like a different just like ideation process around like, how could we have this product, how can we make this inclusive, can this be brought to market where like everyone can use it. So we had like ideas there, but as Leah mentioned, just like some other barriers that we went into. But yeah, so like inclusive design would have like made it like more like a bigger market size for us, so that like we would have like more money to show that like, oh, in the later stages this is how much we could be earning. And then universal design is like you like it can like everyone can use it, and like there have to be no adaptations. But yeah, so we just wanted to highlight this. And also like everyone, I feel like whoever's like starting on, we should have like maybe like read more about this. Like initially we didn't have like a lot of information around this. So anyone who's doing a project in this area would like, we would suggest that you like read more about these 3 areas and like how they're like processes around like how you can make a product accessible or inclusive or universal. But this is also like hindsight, like we could have not known this early on, but like now we know. So like this is helpful for us like for further down in our career, like on in other projects, especially like for Katie and Leah, who are like all actually working in this area. Like this all information has been really helpful, and this all just like learnings have been like helpful to us to see like what to do and like what can we do differently essentially. Yeah, and with that, if anyone has any comments, questions, or thoughts, yeah, these are some resources for just like in and around Boston, like user recruitment, what could that look like? And YBug is like one of our biggest partners throughout the project. They're basically like a group who tests like different technologies. We met a lot with them online, like on Zoom as well. So like they're quite open and like very helpful throughout the process. And then I think the third one is Katie had put that in. But yeah, these were just like some resources where like you could talk to users and like actually get in touch with them. And Lighthouse for the Blind was essentially like they do user testing for like groups of disability. So you can like pay them. I think Katie, you might know more about this, but yeah, you could like essentially pay them and then they could help with the user testing. So there are like existing structures too. So you don't have to like if you have the funding, you can always go for that for like a big project. But yeah, this maybe like a video. We can share the link. We don't have to put this, but yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And if anyone has any questions or comments, we would love to chat with you or just things that you'd like to discuss.
Thank you. That was a very good presentation. Learned quite a bit on the processes that you guys used and your methodologies for design. So it's very insightful. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head I could possibly suggest for how you went about things beyond what you've already touched on. And yeah, just thank you guys. This was very insightful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Just the walkthrough was so thoughtful, even starting off with like the directions you were anticipating to go through, and then seeing that journey of coming across the opportunity with the pregnancy test. I thought it was so great. And then what you did past your final design of hindsight's costs, like everything you learned, this was really valuable. I am curious, I know you already had insights to how this, might be received from a business point of view, where it's like it is a small market, and at the end of the day, it's like numbers for people. And you already saw that hindsight of maybe repositioning it, but then it's also accessible. Have you thought more maybe like next steps? Are you thinking about maybe rebranding or positioning it in a way and trying to push it further? Or are you kind of feeling like this is closing out and just taking opportunities to educate people?
I think we would love to. We need to talk to more people. I mean, I'm not sure what so I was the one that went out to like do the FDA approval research. So I think like I have like the most knowledge of like that wall. I think I would need to talk to more experts in that space, just because like getting class 2 approval without a previously like similar device being approved, it's like brutal. Like we could spend $400,000 and get rejected. And so I just don't know how to navigate that without like big company, like the funding of a big company, like I don't know, we just don't have $400,000 to risk like that. And so I don't know how to get around that barrier. Like we've thought about like releasing it as like not saying it's a pregnancy test, like saying it's like a guide or something, and that like I don't know if there's so like we're interested, and like the challenge isn't the manufacturing it because I really think we could manufacture it and sell it at like and like make our money back and just like break even, but it's the FDA approval.
I would also add, I think we also spoke about the conversation with Clear Blue was kind of like hoping that one of the existing pregnancy test companies would just do this. Like our motivation isn't particularly like monetary. We're not even thinking that they need to like, you know, pay us however much, but they're in the best place to do this, right? They already have the market, they have the established brand name, like just do this. So that like was what sparked the conversation with Clear Blue people, but obviously like that's a very long shot. Something else that we all talked about as a group is like maybe open sourcing sort of our like designs, in a sense that, you know, hopefully like someone could at least benefit from this or like do this. So removing barriers as much as possible. But those are some of the things that we thought about in terms of like the next.
Are you familiar with Rhea Health at all? They developed the pessary. They're actually women designers and engineers from Smart Design, and they've been going through a similar journey of they did get FDA approval recently, I think, but I remember that being like a really big journey for them. So I would be happy to introduce you if they'd be helpful to chat with if you haven't discovered them already.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, this is so informative. I feel like as designers, we go through the design iterative process, but never really consider the engineering bit or like the business bit. So it's so intuitive or just like insightful to see your journey. Another thing I was thinking, because I've been working with a lot of students who are designing for assistive tech, and even with myself, it's like we have an idea that this person's going through a problem, but we don't really know what they're going through. So it's important to design with the co-designer instead of for someone. Was just wondering, how did you guys identify the problem? Like what made you come up with the idea that we want to design a pregnancy test, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, it came right from the users. Like we Katie and I were actually at like an accessibility hackathon recently, and so they so the interest, like the intro talk from one of the researchers showed this crazy project where like you could navigate a space and it would like vibrate when you got close to a wall, and they made this whole thing without ever talking to anyone with low vision. And then they like found someone with low vision and like tagged him in to try it. And then like the very next speaker like was someone who was blind, who was like an accessibility expert. And he called it out immediately. He's like, nothing you build is going to be as like useful as my cane. Like if I bump into something, it's not a failure. It's like me exploring a space. Like what is this? Like he totally called it out. And I think it just speaks to the fact that like the things that like we think are problems often aren't. We very much got, and like we had to learn that, but we didn't know that coming in. And so like very much like from conversations with users, like because this was 2 years ago, we were the ones bringing up COVID tests. And that was a problem. People were frustrated that they couldn't read the COVID test, that it was like the instructions for each one were different. It was like hard to figure out, like what if they touched the wrong piece? And then that is sort of the intro point where people started bringing pregnancy tests up on their own.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of our user interviews, like medical self-tests, like generally used to come up a lot, and just like privacy around like medical tests and just like medical processes, they used to come up a lot. So it was just, yeah, like funny, it was like multiple people, and I think multiple women had talked about just like their experiences of having gone through this process, but like they had to like ask their partner, but they didn't want to. So it just, yeah, like it came up in like multiple of the just like interviews that we had.
I think Joyce had a question in the Q&A or chat section about, I'm going to read this out. So how much you want to sell this product, including where to place it in a store and marketing strategies. I've worked on an accessible product and received feedback from users that don't want to be differentiated or find the products from an accessibility section. So I'm curious about all your thoughts. I can start with an attempt of an answer, and then y'all can jump in on that. I think we sort of wanted to be just in like the normal pregnancy test section. I think one thing that comes up a lot because my research right now is also on accessibility, people talk about this concept as like, this is a social space, right? Go into a shop, buy something, that's a social experience. And it's really important to have that shared have the equality or like equity in that social experience, in that like, if I'm here to get something, then I want it to be like where it is. And like kind of like a parallel way of thinking about it is, there's a lot of big push on accessibility of websites, right? And for developers, you write documentations where developers go and refer to like how to use your tool. Previously there's been this divide of like, okay, here's all of my documentation on like the rest of the library, and there's like one section that's like accessibility. And so now the movement is like, we want to put the accessibility stuff with all of the other sections just where they should be, and it's just like, hey, here's another thing that you should do. So I think that's kind of, I hear what the users are saying, and I think we have more or less heard similar things. But yeah, anyone else wanna add to that?
Yeah, I think I remember in one of the conversations, like this had come up that like they don't want like a different section, and like disability tax used to come up so many times that like we don't want to pay like extra money for like a product that everyone's getting at the same price. There was also like a website where like a lot of like products were there where they used to like shop. I'm not sure like which website was that, KNBI, if you remember. But yeah, we could share that later on. But like there are a lot of products which were like made for people with low vision and like blindness. They were given that. But yeah, our approach was like, we're gonna put it in like a CVS or like where anyone can like access it, because it's not like a person who's sighted cannot use it. We like, our approach was that like, oh, it's accessible, but it's also like someone with vision can access it.
I can read out the next one. Do you have any tips for working in teams and making this experience successful? So I actually pulled up, here, I'll share this. I pulled up this slide where this is like, so I think it was a couple things. One, we were very precise in when we were doing certain things. So like, when are we brainstorming and coming up with like a lot of different ideas, and like when does that end, and like when are we choosing something and kind of moving on to the next step? We were like very precise about that. And that didn't mean we couldn't go back and question things, but it did mean that like everyone was sort of on the same page as to like where we were in the process. We also had this, before we made any major decisions, we had different ways that we kind of ranked different ideas. In this case, this one was like practicality, uniqueness, feasibility, impact, and personal interest. And this could have been anywhere in the process. I think this was probably when we were choosing like what to work on more generally. And or I think this was after we had already chosen the blind and low vision community, and we were choosing out of like 4 ideas, so 3 ideas, like what to move forward with. And it was super, super helpful to do, because it's not like the one that wins we definitely have to move forward with, but it does make sure that we're all like speaking the same language and like taking the same things into consideration when like having those discussions, because otherwise you're just like working at a totally emotional level. Like, no, I feel I like this one, and there's nothing to grab onto and talk about and decide with. So I think this really helped.
Yeah, and I think this made sure that all of us were heard, versus like in a lot of team projects, it can happen like the extroverts are talking. But through this, like we all put our thoughts in, and then we all talked about like, why do we think this? So that was really helpful, which yeah, like that's what like I also wanted to like mention this, like having these metrics was just like really easy for all of us to like come on the same page and like align and like make decisions and not feel bad about that, like, oh, I was not heard, which is like happens too often. But then um yeah, this really helped us.
I'm gonna add one more thing to that. I think the way that we went about it was like, even though we all came in with like our specific backgrounds and the things that we were like good at doing, everybody sort of did everything.
Yeah.
You can clearly tell from the slides that the prettier sketches are done by Salonia and Yuna, but the uglier ones are by me. But I think the process of like, but then we also like all prototyped. Again, prettier prototypes are from Salonia and Yuna, but uglier prototypes are from me. But I think that was very helpful in a sense that it builds kind of like this we're all in this together feeling. It helps us appreciate our different disciplines and backgrounds so much more. It helped us learn a lot, and it really helped us think from other people's perspectives. I know that this is not necessarily something that a lot of us get to do in a professional setting, because we're very siloed into our thing. But at least, you know, in this particular instance, that was very valuable for us.
Yeah, and I think like,
oh,
yeah, sorry.
no, please add. I was going to ask another question when you all are done.
Oh, I was just gonna mention there was like a document initially that like IDM had provided us as to like getting on the same page of like what are we excited about. It had like multiple things where we could see like what do we want out of this process, where do we want to grow. So that was helpful to see and understand about each other, like what are you excited about, so that I feel like this brought us together and like felt closer to each other and understand about each other's perspectives.
I was going to ask a new question if that's okay. I was curious about the process of, you know, seeing how many people you're able to connect with visual impairment. And I was curious what your process was learning. It's like how to speak about it, even just like write phrases or terms when, like, you know, for anyone designing for any, you know, even culturally, like, do you do some research up front? Do you find someone that you feel comfortable asking those types of questions with? Like, what was that process of learning even how to like the verbiage and things that are respectful to different demographics?
I think a couple of things helped us. I think one, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but TikTok was really, really awesome. It was people are on there sharing like their daily experiences and how they, in the example that you saw, like make toast or like choose what to wear that day. And people are also sharing their frustrations with what people think they can't do, and like how ridiculous it is and like how they are just like living their day-to-day lives. And so that gave us a really good baseline, as to just like how like the frustrations that people with like low vision and blindness have with like people's assumptions. And then we also had really good partners. So we partnered with this group called Vibug, and it's a group of like older adults. I think everyone we worked with was actually born blind, which is kind of rare. That was like the group we ended up working with. And they were specifically like a technology group. And so they were just really excited to work with us and like really excited to work on a project like this, because like they are like a group really interested in accessible technology. And so I think that helped a lot. Like this wasn't a group that was gonna like it was a group that was gonna educate us like as we worked with them. And yeah, we learned a lot from them.
There was also, I think, on YouTube somewhere, there was like a video from Molly Burke, I think, where she talked about like things that sighted people do, which annoys her, which is like really helpful. So I think like a lot of our like secondary research helped us understand like things that we should not be doing, and we definitely might have made some mistakes throughout our user research, but yeah, like our users were really kind, and then understanding, I feel, which is really helpful. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the secondary research also helped us. And like I think the thing was like we went in, like initially we did interviews over Zoom, and then we went in person. So that just like initial conversation and then going in person helped us like get used to about like how are we talking with them, and like how are we approaching this? So that like, yeah, break it like down for us.
I will add one other thing, which is I think the mentality is also important or helpful in a sense that like working with, we've worked with like the visually impaired community for a little bit, but like if it's a different community, I'm probably going to offend some people at the start. And like I think going in accepting that that's going to happen helps a lot, because then I think you're a lot more encouraged to ask questions. So like when in doubt, always ask questions and just be like, I'm probably gonna offend some people, and like be really ready to apologize. And I think, I think the other thing is like, making sure that our user time is respected. It doesn't mean that we're doing this project kind of like in the goodness of like helping them, and therefore we are entitled to have like user testing time. Not that anyone would kind of necessarily think that, but I think understanding, like respecting their time and understanding that, especially with disability, like the community of people who experience disability, I think I've definitely experienced a little bit of like fatigue with at least academia, constantly being like, oh, we want to make like an accessible project. And they're like, at the beginning, everybody's like super excited, this is great. But then when things don't materialize, when it's like always a new project, but the project doesn't get somewhere, I think that is when sometimes like I've met people who are frustrated by that. And I think that's very fair. But I think that something that we try to do is like, we always try to like get back to our users. We'll be like, hey, we did this testing with you. Here's what we found. Here are all of the changes that we've made. So at least they feel like their opinions made a difference, even though this project, like we also told our Viabog partner very honestly, we said, oh, we run into these in this issue. We unfortunately don't think that we can take it to market right now. But so like showing the like commitment, or at least giving them like sense of closure and involvement, I think that has been really helpful. And then I think the other stuff in particular, again, to the visually impaired community, is like stuff that you just kind of like gradually pick up when you interact with them a little bit more. Like I definitely notice for some of the people that I work with, I'm a lot better at describing what I'm doing when I'm interacting with them. Because like one thing that I never really thought about is like, if you don't make sounds, if you don't like go like, oh yeah, yes, I understand, they can't see you nod. So it's kind of a very like daunting experience. Can you imagine like if if I'm talking at you all and nobody ever said anything, even though you're all nodding, like that's a very daunting experience, right? But and then the last thing is like, I think just treating everyone like people, especially with like the able-bodied and like disabled body, this particular like communities, just treat them that you would treat anyone else. Probably means that they'll like bump into more things, but it's like Leah said, like it's part of experiencing. So it's like, that helps. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble. I will read the next question for someone else to answer, which is, did you have to go through IRB approval to conduct research, and did it affect your process? I can also try and answer this first. Yes, IRB approval, cookies, city trainings. We did all of that, and it's pretty, I don't know, we didn't really get an exemption for our project. I don't know why, but like there are certain projects that you do, like for example, my current research was exempted, even though I was still working with people with visual impairment. But the reason that it was exempted is because like I'm asking my users to read a chart. So it's like very, very trivial. But yeah, does anyone else have things to add in terms of like particular hurdles or challenges we had with cookies?
No, I think it helped that we were like part of MIT. So like there's resources here to go through it. I think it's like something to be more aware of if you're like outside of an institution that like has the resources to do it. I think that makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, I feel like we had to just be like really careful about privacy of like because we were doing so many user testing, like like we had like a couple of videos of people, so we asked for like their permission before like adding those in our videos, if like they'd be comfortable with that. Yeah, but I think, yeah, IRB like sort of like we did it, but like initially I feel like when we were interviewing, that process was exam, but when we started like testing, that was where it was like we had to get the approvals.
I just wanted to chime in and say one of the things I appreciated throughout your guys' presentation was, I think it was at the very beginning, you guys acknowledged kind of the politics in play with women's autonomy. And I think that kind of falls along with the question that one of the attendants asked earlier, which is this just, specifically for blind people, or is this for everyone? And considering the fact that we're all very highly monitored and we're kind of in a surveillance state these days, I think it's really powerful that you guys are thinking through a topic that isn't addressed that will actually benefit quite a few people outside of just the blind space. I'm part of the disabled community. I use an insulin pump, and so I totally relate to the feeling of wanting to have everything in one place, and also just constantly having to answer questions about my condition. Very, very friendly about talking about it, so not like, concerned about getting offended or anything. I think when it comes to being part of an overlooked community, like being blind or being diabetic, we want to have as many people aware of what we're experiencing, because we don't have the tools to get through it as easily as other people do. And with relation to your FDA experience, totally understand the frustration with that, because there's so many like updates that we want in the diabetic community when it comes to our insulin pumps, and that's like, I think, a tier 1 product. And so it takes years for any sort of progress to be made. And luckily we're at a really, I guess, it's at a better rate than it was obviously like 20 years ago. But it's still not fast enough, I think, than where we want it to be. And I am sure that it's the same case for many other conditions as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to go through this process and sharing all of this. This has been super informative and really inspiring for me. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think like in a lot of user research, like this used to come up that like, oh, so many people do like projects on this, but like they never come to market. So we really wanted to show like where we got stuck, like where we were like there were obstacles, because a lot of times like we didn't know like why don't people like bring these to market. So we really wanted to show like this is where like the complications are, and this is where like it's sort of like difficult to actually bring these to market, even if your idea is good, even if like it can be profitable, but then just this like barrier which is there for a reason. So completely understand that too. But yeah, thank you for sharing your experience.
Okay, one more question for me. I was curious, for obviously you guys are focusing on the design of communication of the test. With your directions, was there any thought about the experience of finding out you're pregnant? So like, because that can either be such an exciting thing for someone, or it could also be a not a great news. So like, was there any thought that, or just even if it's just trying to stay like neutral as possible, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that was like a big part. I think like during like the initial communication, when we were even like looking at like the competitors or like existing products, there were like some pregnancy tests which had like a smiley for like a positive, or like a sad face for like negative, and we were like, you don't know if they're happy about it or not. So like we tried to like be as neutral about it. That's why like we stuck to like the 1 vibration, 2 vibration, 3 vibration, because it's not really like giving you like a lot of like this is how you should feel about it. But that was definitely like a big thing that came in our research. And I think like during like watching videos, or like just like during the secondary research, like there was like a couple of videos around that as well, just like designing for emotion. So we thought about that a little. I don't know if Yona, Katie, or Leah, if you guys had any thoughts around that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We'll be sharing the recording. So yeah, and we can also share like the resources page with everyone if that'll be helpful. But yeah, it was really nice seeing everyone. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
For Thank you so much. Really great. Thank you.